Okay, so this is the fifth step in the essay writing process. It comes after all the previous four steps of brainstorming different ideas, looking at the different subject rubrics and picking a subject, conducting research, which is the third step, and then crafting the question, which is the fourth step. So after these steps, introduction and outlining are next. And there's lots of different ways to outline. On the screen we've got some different examples of what comes up in Google Images for an essay outline template. And there's lots of different ways to do this right. Students aren't required to use specifically one type of outline, but they definitely should not use a 5-paragraph essay outline for a 4,000-word piece. That would be completely inappropriate. It would be like taking a gigantic foot and shoving it into a shoe, which is way too small. So outside of that, it's pretty flexible. Students can choose kind of from a variety of different outline formats based on what they're doing. Obviously, it might look a little bit different if someone's doing a biology lab versus an argumentative piece in history. But basically, the different steps to go through are kind of detailed on the extended essay page. Again, there's a few different links. And for this step, the link that's most helpful is how do I write the intro and outline. So when clicking on that, it goes to a page here which kind of details some of the steps that I'm going to talk about. And the first stop is probably looking at the rubric again. Students are going to want to see, depending on what their subject is, what the rubric is exactly asking for. And it can be confusing because in different subjects the expectations are different. So in biology, for example, if you look for the different subjects on the left-hand side, you click on whatever subject you're looking for. If you click on biology, you go to the bottom and you look at different different parts of the essay. One of them is the introduction, and it details that the introduction is largely used to set the research question into context. This might require giving some background information on the topic, but you shouldn't drone on. And generally speaking, the introduction is kind of brief, maybe like 200, 400, absolute top, 600 words. If it's a different subject, such as history, for example, the introduction is going to be kind of similar. Here it says the introduction also looks for the context of the topic and why it is significant. This also might be a good place to put the opinions of existing historians if it is something like a topic that is well written on. Also, regardless of whatever subject you're writing, it's always smart to put the research question in the introduction so it's very clear what is being done. In fact, it might also be smart to even copy parts of this rubric and simply paste them into the document where the outline and introduction are being written. So after checking the rubric, the next step to kind of do is maybe going back to the exemplar page. So if you go to the exemplar page, you can kind of see, again, if you're writing in history, for example, you can click on one of the examples. I think number 4 is a particularly useful one, not because it scored so high overall, like number 6 did, but because it did well in some sections and not well in other sections, and the introduction is one section where the author did pretty well. And they kind of detail the significance of the topic, which deals with the Belgian collaboration with Nazi occupiers in World War II. You'll notice what's absent from this piece, though, if you look at it and you spend some time kind of reading it, is mentioning extensive research. It does have one citation in it, but it could have been a little bit stronger there. A really strong introduction in history is going to consult existing work, if there is existing work. It's possible, of course, that a student will be looking at a topic that's so little recognized. For example, maybe they're doing their essay on the history of the American school of Tegucigalpa, and what were the principal causes of academic success in the school. Well, no one's written on that before, so there's not going to be anyone to consult or cite. But if you're doing it more generally speaking on a topic that's debated frequently, like Hitler or the Cold War or Vietnam or something like that, you're going to want to include citations. And that's kind of what's mentioned here. It says, if you're writing on like the origins of the Cold War, names like Gar Elpovitz, John Lewis Gaddis, George Kennan are going to be names that you mention. Also helpful when looking at the exemplar is getting ideas for thinking about how to format the piece, because it is 4,000 words. It's a gigantic piece of text. It will probably be the longest piece of text that students have written in their high school career, it's probably very useful to look at the table of contents and get some ideas about how did different writers organize their piece, and how can a gigantic idea be broken up into smaller pieces. After that, after looking at the exemplar, the next step is just kind of doing the outline. And again, there's many different ways to do an outline, as Google Images can kind of remind us here. As we can see, there's some different mind maps and flow charts, and some of them are just kind of like bullet pointed lists. But the next step is to kind of do the outline. And some of the main questions to think about when you're doing the outline, and again, these are also probably useful questions to think about when you're looking at the exemplar, is what sections will the essay be divided into? How will your existing evidence fit into those sections, the evidence that you gathered in the research stage? Is there more evidence that still needs to be collected? If there is, how are you going to get it? And generally speaking, the more work that is done here with the outline, the more thorough that the outline is, the less work a student will have to do in the rough draft. So, while this deadline really only deals with writing the introduction and, loosely speaking, doing an outline, the more thorough that outline is, the easier the rough draft is going to be.